Okay, so we're back on our first game design project, and we're going deep into game mechanics, and we're trying to add things to our game now that we have the basic design. We're trying to add things that are going to make our game more fun to play. And another one of those things that can make it really satisfying, specifically to shoot the monsters, are sounds. If the monsters make a real crazy sound when we shoot them, that makes it even more fun. And then for any of the game assets that we're going to add to our games, I highly recommend visiting opengameart.org. Instead of spending hours and hours designing your own game assets, there's some on here for free that you can just use. Since we're just using them for our school projects, you can feel free to use these. If you have a game idea that you actually want to make into something and you want to market, you definitely want to consider creating your own game assets or purchasing them from a royalty-free site. But for the purposes of our class, these will all work just fine. So you can either use this site or you can choose whatever site you like. But you need to download 3 things for the rest of this series. You need a theme song for your game. You need a sound for your gun to make when you shoot it. And then you need a sound for the monsters to make when you hit them with bullets. So once you have those all set to go, let's start with the first one and pretty much the easiest, which is the theme song. What you want to do is on the start of the layout, remember when we made this on the last video, I told you this was going to be useful. On start of layout, we want to add an action. And in order to do that, we have to do a couple of things first. So first thing we need to do is insert a new object. And the object that we're going to insert is going to be an audio object. Now the audio object's a little tricky, but don't worry, I'm going to show you how to use them. And then we're going to go to this sounds folder here in the projects panel. And we're going to right click that and we're going to say import sounds. And now it's going to open up a Windows Explorer thing and to get us to find the sounds that we're looking for. And I just have mine in a folder in my project folder called sound effects, and under music, or not sure exactly where I stashed it. So actually I accidentally stashed this one under hits. So I'm going to do that, and then what it's going to do, what you're going to want are, for the most part, when you're importing assets, are .wav files. If you have a sound that you really like and you need it converted to WAV, please see me and I'll show you how to do that. But you need it in a .wav file, and the reason why is because when I click import, after a little bit of fidgeting, you'll notice that it says successfully converted to OGG and AAC. So the OGG format is actually an open format that works well in Google Chrome, and you need the AAC for Internet Explorer and Firefox. So you actually need both of those conversions, and the only way you get it automatically through Construct 2 is to use a .wav file. Trust me, if you have an MP3 or something that you'd like to use, we can get it converted to WAV before we import it into Construct 2, and it'll make your life a ton easier. So once we're done with that, we click OK. So I have my battle theme imported into the game. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to add my action again on start of layout. I'm going to play an audio file, and I'm going to use battle theme 1, and I want to loop it, so I'm going to set it to looping, and I'm going to set the volume down a little bit, because you'll notice, actually we'll try it out the regular way first. I'll click done, and we'll play our game. And to be honest, theme music seems like it's going to be a little loud and may overshadow some of the other sounds in our game. And you can see I just turned that off right now, and it actually seems like we're getting a big break once that audio is down because it's just way too loud. So I'm going to set it at like a -10, and we'll see how that goes. So basically a 0, when you import audio, this volume is 0 is at the normal volume that the that the file that you're importing is already at. You can turn up the volume by adding, plus whatever number, or you can turn down the volume a bit by entering in a negative number. So I want to turn it down a little bit, so I'll enter in a negative number. I'll click done, and if I play this again, you can see that my background music is a little bit less pronounced. And really, this is exactly where you want a background track to be. A lot of people make the mistake of having their background music too loud, and actually long term it makes your game less fun to play. It's kind of irritating to hear loud blaring background music, because you also want to focus on some of the other sounds in the game, like number one, the super satisfying sound it makes when you shoot your gun. And that's what we're going to do next, because it's the next least complicated sound that we're going to add. So if you think about it, I want that gun sound to go off when I pull the trigger. And pulling the trigger for the purposes of this game is when we click the left mouse button. It activates the trigger or it spawns the bullet. Basically, we're pulling the trigger when we click the left mouse button. So at that point, I want to make a gun sound as well. So let's go back a second. I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to add an action on the mouse click, and it's going to be an audio action, and I'm going to play, and hopefully a pistol comes up here in my menu, and I want this one not to loop, and I want to play this one is probably going to be super loud as well. So I'm going to put that one at a -5. And truth be told, I already tested out the bullet sound. It was pretty loud, which is why I'm going to turn it down to about a 5. I want it to be a little bit louder than my background music though, because I do want it to have some kick to it, but it was a little loud. So I'm going to click down there, and let's just try this out really quick and see how it goes. So I got my background music here, and I'm shooting my monsters, and this seems to be going pretty well. So even though that's a little loud, I could probably just turn everything down and play this at a comfortable volume. So it's louder rather than quieter, but I have found kind of a comfortable balance here, I think. So next thing we want to do, sound-wise, we want to make those monsters make a noise when we shoot them, because it's a little bit more satisfying if we know we're actually doing some damage to the monsters. This one's a little bit more complicated, and we're going to find out why in just a second. So when do we want the monster to make a noise? Well, we probably want it to do that when we hit it with a bullet. So that's going to be this guy right here, on collision with monster, right? Because that's when this bullet makes a collision with the monster. We want to add an action there, and what that's going to be is another sound. And again, I forgot to add my sound, so we're going to find another sound here. Let's go for import sounds, and then I'm going to go to hits, and I think I have an orc die sound that I found on opengameart.org, and make sure you use the WAV file again. I think this one I had to convert, so if you go ahead and use it, make sure you talk to me so I can help you get it converted. So I'm going to do that, and as soon as I click convert, look for no errors here is what you really want to do when you're importing sounds. Make sure you get a successful conversion here, and so now that has been added. So I got that arc die. So then I'm going to do on collision with monster. I'm going to play the audio of orc die, and again that one's not going to be looping. I'm going to leave the volume alone, but what I want to do is I want to add a tag here, and you'll understand why I'm going to use the tag later. I'm going to call it monster hit, and then I'm going to click done. And so now we have this set up for the audio to play when our bullet makes a collision with the monster. The audio is going to play, and I'm actually going to drag this up to the top here, and the reason why I'm going to do that is because we have this wait 0.3 seconds. We actually don't want to wait that 0.3 seconds before we play the audio. We want to play the audio right away when that bullet makes a collision with the monster. So if I play this now, you can see there's something awful happens. You just get a continuous. You can see how those orc screams just kind of echo a little bit, and that's pretty irritating. We actually want to only have the same orc scream at a time, one at a time. So if I'm shooting one orc 5 or 6 times, as I'm shooting it, I want that audio to start over each time, because otherwise it's just going to echo over itself. So I'm going to use something called a sub event. So if I click this top event here, way over here on the green arrow, I can right click and I can say add a sub event. And that is going to be an audio. And we're going to say is tag playing. And that's where that tag comes into effect. So I want to say if monster hit is playing. Right? So I'm still checking to see if the bullet's making collision with the monster, but now I'm making a second check that, so basically if the bullet's making collision with the monster and monster hit is playing, I'm going to add an audio event, and what that audio event is going to be is it's going to stop the current monster hit. So you can see what I'm using this tag for, because that is when you create a sound event like that, that becomes the only way to identify it, because you want to identify not the sound itself, but the instance at which you play it. And the only way you can call it is through these tags. So I want to stop the existing monster hit that's happening, which is that sound playing, and then I want to start a new one. So I'm going to play Orc Die, and that is a monster hit also. So let's try this again. So if I run my game again, and I'll turn up the volume, you can see that those start over as I'm hitting the monster. And that's super important, so I don't have a bunch of sounds echoing over each other. And we'll turn up the volume a little bit so you can hear it a little bit more clearly, and I'll try that one more time. So you can see how well that works. So now we've added some super fun functionality to the games, and all we've done here is just add a couple of simple animation and some sound. So what I'd like you to do for the rest of the next class period is to switch out all the assets in here. So take this, for instance, the player object, and download a new picture for your player asset. And you can just open it up through that folder, select a new asset, and it'll change out the picture. All your animations and everything will stay the same. Same thing with the monsters. You can keep the explosion if you want, because the explosion is pretty cool. But switch out bullets, monsters, player, and we're going to add a theme song. You want to add a sound for your gun, and a sound that your enemies are going to make when you hit them with the bullet.